Hello everybody, this is Refresh and I'm here to bring you a battle between the Game Night 2019 decks. We will be playing using the star variant, so each deck is trying to knock out its opposing colors. For example, white is trying to knock out red and black, and whichever deck knocks out its opposing colors first will be the winner. Those opposing colors will also be considered opponents, and the other colors will be considered allies. So each color can only attack its opponents, and when cards say opponent, it will only affect the players that are of the enemy color. We're going to roll a 6-sided die to determine which deck goes first. White will be 1, we'll go around clockwise. If we roll a 6, we'll just re-roll. White will go first. Each deck will draw 7 cards. White draws Kytheon's Irregulars, Zetalpa Primal Dawn, Patron of the Valiant, Plains, Patron of the Valiant, Steadfast Sentry, and Sephara Sky's Blade. These are all the most expensive cards in the deck, and there's only 1 Plains, and so we can't keep this. Because this is multiplayer, we'll use our free mulligan and draw back up to 7. We now have a Plains, High Cliff Veladar, Consul's Lieutenant, Plains, Relief Captain, and Zetalpa Primal Dawn. This is still a couple really expensive cards, but we do have a 2 and a 4, and so I think we will keep this. Blue draws Island, Gale Strike, Decision Paralysis, Island, and Island. There's actually no threats in this at all, and a whole bunch of islands, and so I think we'll use our free mulligan and try a new hand of 7. The second hand has a Cryptic Serpent, Cloudkin Seer, Salvager of Secrets, Winged Words, Aven Windmage, Island, and Engulf the Shore. 1 land does not make a good hand, and so we're going to mulligan this and go down to 6. Now we have a Cryptic Serpent, Island, Warden of Evos Isles, Cloudkin Seer, Sphinx of Enlightenment, Salvager of Secrets, and Island. Having just 2 lands does make me a bit hesitant to keep this hand. However, we can't really go down to 5, and so we'll go ahead and keep this hand, taking the 7 mana Cryptic Serpent and sticking it at the bottom of the deck. Black draws Grasp of Darkness, Swamp, Undead Servant, and Howling Golem. I think this is a keepable hand. We have things that we can play, and removal, and lands. Red draws Mountain, Zealot of the God Pharaoh, Spark-Tongued Dragon, Fiendish Duo, Dragon Egg, Voldaren Duelist, and Lathis Dragon Queen. We only have 1 land, so we can't keep this otherwise very expensive hand, so we will use our free mulligan. Red has a Mountain, Lightning Strike, Goblin Smuggler, Destructive Tampering, Kelvin Rider, Glinthorn Buccaneer, and Mountain. I don't like this hand because we are short a land to cast all of these, but I think we're going to keep it anyways and hope we can draw into the lands that we need. Green draws Forest, Grazing Whiptail, Forest, Leafkin Druid, Forest, and Forest. This is not great, but I think just because we have a Grazing Whiptail, we're going to keep this and hope that we stop drawing forests for perhaps the rest of the game. White will get started, and because this is multiplayer, each player will draw on their first turn. So white will draw a Plains, will play the Plains, and then white will pass the turn. Blue draws, gets an island, blue will play the island, and blue will pass the turn. Black draws, gets a murder, black will play a swamp, and black will pass the turn. Red draws, gets a pack mastiff, will play the mountain, and red will pass the turn. Green draws, gets a forest, will play the forest, and then green will pass the turn. White draws, gets a raise the alarm, and white will play a Plains. We'll tap both Plains and play the Consul's Lieutenant. This is a 2/1 human soldier with first strike and renown 1. And whenever a Consul's Lieutenant attacks, if it's renowned, other attacking creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. And white will pass the turn. Blue draws, gets a Moat Piranhas. Blue will play an island. And then blue will tap both islands and play the Moat Piranhas. This is a 3/3 fish defender, and blue will pass the turn. Black draws, gets a swamp, will play the swamp, and black will immediately tap both swamps and cast Grasp of Darkness, targeting the Consul's Lieutenant. This is an instant. It says target creature gets -4/-4 until end of turn. This will kill Consul's Lieutenant, then black will pass the turn. Red draws, gets a mountain, will play the mountain, will tap both mountains, and will play the Pack Mastiff. This is a 2/2 Hound, and for 1 in a red, each creature you control named Pack Mastiff gets +1/+0 until end of turn. Red will pass the turn. Green draws, gets a Leafkin Druid, will play the Forest, will tap both forests and will play the Leafkin Druid. This is a 0/3 elemental druid. You can tap it to add green. If you control 4 or more creatures, add green green instead. And then green will pass the turn. White untaps, draws, gets a Take Vengeance. White will play Plains, and then white will pass the turn. Blue untaps, blue draws, gets an island. Blue will play the island, and then blue will tap 3 mana and play Warden of Evo's Isles. This is a 2/2 bird wizard with flying, and creature spells with flying you cast cost 1 less to cast. And then blue will pass the turn. Black untaps, draws, gets a swamp, will play the swamp. Black will tap 3 mana and play the Howling Golem. This is a 2/3 artifact golem. Whenever Howling Golem attacks or blocks, each player draws a card. And then black will pass the turn. Red untaps, draws, gets a Kargan Dragon Rider. Red will play a mountain, and then red will tap 3 mana and cast Glinthorn Buccaneer. This is a 2/4 Minotaur Pirate with haste. Whenever you discard a card, Glinthorn Buccaneer deals 1 damage to each opponent. You can pay 1 and red and discard a card to draw a card, and you can activate this ability only if Glinthorn Buccaneer is attacking. We will immediately attack white with the Pack Mastiff for 2. White will take 2 and go to 18, and red will pass the turn. Green untaps, draws, gets a Wakefruit Elemental. Green will play a Forest, and then we will tap everything and play the Grazing Whiptail. This is a 3/4 dinosaur with reach, and then green will pass the turn. At the end of green's turn, white will tap 2 planes and play Raise the Alarm. This is an instant. It says create 2 1/1 white soldier creature tokens. There's our 2 tokens, and then we'll untap. We'll draw. White draws a plains. White will play the plains. Then white will tap 4 mana and play Relief Captain. This is a 3/2 core knight ally. When it enters the battlefield, support 3. We'll support the 2 soldier tokens, making them 2/2s each. Then white will pass the turn. Blue untaps. Blue draws. Gets a island. Will play the island. Blue will tap 2 mana and cast the Cloud Conceer. This is a 2/1 elemental wizard with flying, and when Cloud Conceer enters the battlefield, draw a card. We'll draw a card, and then we'll get a Frostlynx. And then blue will attack red with the Warden of the Evo's Isles. Red has no way to block, so they'll take 2 and go to 18. Then blue will pass the turn. Black untaps, draws, gets a swamp. Black will play the swamp, and then black will tap 4 swamps and cast the Undead Servant. This is a 3/2 zombie. When it enters the battlefield, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token for each card named Undead Servant in your graveyard. There's 0 currently in the graveyard. And then black will pass the turn. Red untaps. Red draws, gets a Pack Mastiff. Red will tap 3 mana and then play the Goblin Smuggler. This is a 2/2 Goblin Rogue with haste, and you can tap it to have another target creature with power 2 or less can't be blocked this turn. We will tap the Goblin Smuggler to make it so that the Pack Mastiff can't be blocked this turn, and then we'll attack blue with the Pack Mastiff. Blue can't block, so we'll take 2 and go to 18. And red will pass the turn. Green untaps, draws, gets a Ripjaw Raptor. Green will play a Forest, and then green will tap 4 mana and play the Ripjaw Raptor. This is a 4/5 dinosaur with Enrage. Whenever Ripjaw Raptor is dealt damage, draw a card. And then green will pass the turn. White untaps, draws, gets an Inspired Charge. White will play a Plains. White will tap 2 mana and play Take Vengeance. This is a sorcery. It says destroy target tapped creature. Will target the Goblin Smuggler. The Smuggler dies. And white will pass the turn. Blue untaps, blue draws, gets a Claustrophobia. Blue will play an island. Blue will tap all the mana and cast Sphinx of Enlightenment. This is a 5/5 Sphinx with flying, and when it enters the battlefield, target opponent draws a card and you draw 3 cards. We will give red 1 card and we will draw 3 cards. Blue draws an Agent of Treachery, an Aerial Elemental, and a Moat Piranhas. Red draws a Mountain. Blue will attack red with the Warden of Evo's Isles and the Cloud Conceer for 4. Red takes 4 and goes to 14, and blue will pass the turn. Black untaps, draws, gets a Blood for Bones. Black will play a Swamp, and black will stay back on defense. Red untaps, draws, gets a Voldaran Duelist. Red will play the Mountain. Red will tap out, and red will play Keldon Raider. Keldon Raider is a 4/3 human warrior, and when it enters the battlefield, you may discard a card. If you do draw a card, we will discard Destructive Tampering, and we'll draw. We get a Spark Tongue Dragon, and then red will pass the turn. Green untaps. Green draws, gets a Ghalta Primal Hunger. Green will play a Forest. Green will tap out and play a Ghalta Primal Hunger. This is a 12/12 legendary elder dinosaur, and this spell costs X less to cast, where X is the total power of creatures you control. We control 7 power of creatures, and so it only costs 5 to cast, and it has trample. Then green will pass the turn. White untaps, draws, gets a Plains. White will play the Plains, and then white will pass the turn. Blue untaps, draws, gets Rise from the Tide. Blue will spend 3 mana to cast Frostlinks. This is a 2/2 elemental cat, and when it enters the battlefield, tap target creature an opponent controls. That creature doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. We will tap down Ghalta Primal Hunger. Ghalta is tapped. Then blue will attack red again with Warden and Cloud Conceer for 4, and also with the Sphinx of Enlightenment for 5. That is a total of 9 damage going red's way. Red can't block, will take 9 and go to 5. And then blue will pay 2 mana and play another Mode Piranhas, and then blue will pass the turn. At the end of black's turn, black will tap 3 mana and cast Murder, targeting the Ripjaw Raptor. If it is an instant, it says destroy target creature. The Ripjaw Raptor dies. And black will also cast the Grasp of Darkness, targeting the Grazing Whiptail. The Grazing Whiptail dies, and then black untaps. Black draws, gets a Swamp. Black will play the Swamp, and then black will pass the turn. Red untaps. Red draws, gets a Ripscale Predator. Red sees that it's going to be hard to stop blue. They will need to kill the 5/5, but they don't have any way of doing so on this limited amount of mana and no reach. And so red's only thing that they can do is they will tap 2 mana to cast Lightning Strike, targeting one of the Moat Piranhas. 1 Moat Piranha goes down. And then red will spend 2 more mana to play a Kargan Dragon Rider. This is a 2/2 human warrior. As long as you control a dragon, Kargan Dragon Rider has flying. We don't control a dragon. And then we will attack blue with the Keldon Raider. Blue will trade with the Moat Piranhas. The Keldon Raider goes down. And then red will pass the turn. Green untaps, draws, gets a Howling Giant. Green will play another Forest. And then green will spend 7 mana and cast the Howling Giant. This is a 5/5 giant druid with reach. When it enters the battlefield, create 2/2 green wolf creature tokens. There are wolves, and then green will pass the turn. White draws, gets a Raise the Alarm, and then white will pass the turn. Blue untaps. Blue draws, gets an Engulf the Shore. Blue will spend 4 mana and cast Engulf the Shore. This is an instant. It says return to owner's hands all creatures with toughness less than or equal to the number of islands you control. That's with all creatures with toughness 5 or less. Black picks up the Howling Golem and the Undead Servant. Red picks up all of their creatures. Green picks up everything but Ghalta. White picks up everything. Then blue will go to combat. Blue will attack green with everything for a total of 11 damage. Green takes 11 and goes to 9, and then blue will pass the turn. Black draws, gets a Swamp. Black will play the Swamp in its never-ending flood, and then will tap out and recast the Undead Servant and the Howling Golem, and then black will pass the turn. Red untaps, draws, gets an Act of Treason. Red sees an opportunity for vengeance and will tap 3 mana and cast Act of Treason, targeting Galta, Primal Hunger. This is a sorcery. It says gain control of target creature until end of turn. Untap that creature, it gains haste until end of turn. We gain control of Galta, it's untapped, it's hasted, and we will attack blue with Galta Primal Hunger for 12. Blue has no responses, it cannot block. We'll take 12 and go to 6. And then red will pass the turn. Galta will return to green. Green untaps, draws, gets a Thunderherd Migration. Green will go straight into attacks and attack blue with Galta Primal Hunger for another 12. And blue can do nothing but die, and so blue is out. On the second main phase, and then green will pay 2 more mana and play a Leafkin Druid. Then we'll pay another 2 more mana and play another Leafkin Druid. And then green will pass the turn. At the end of green's turn, white will tap 2 and will play Raise the Alarm, getting 2 soldiers. Then white will untap. We'll draw. We'll get the plains. We'll play the plains. And then white will tap everything to play Highcliff Felidar. This is a 5/5 cat beast with vigilance, and when it enters the battlefield, for each opponent, choose a creature with the greatest power among those creatures and destroy those creatures. There's 2 opponents left for white. Red doesn't have any creatures, and so we will take and kill the Undead Servant. The Undead Servant dies. And then white will attack red with both soldiers for 2. Red can't block, we'll take 2 and go to 3. And then white will pass the turn. Black untaps. Black draws, gets another swamp. Black will play the swamp, and black will pass the turn. Red untaps, draws, gets a Packed Mastiff. Red will spend 4 mana and cast a Kargan Dragon Rider and a Packed Mastiff, and then red will pass the turn. Green untaps, draws, gets a Ferocious Pup. Green will attack black with Galta Primal Hunger. Black will take 12 and go to 8. Green will spend 3 mana and play the Ferocious Pup. This is a 0/1 wolf, and when it enters the battlefield, create a 2/2 green wolf creature token. Now we have 5 creatures, so the Leafkin Druids can tap for 2 each. We will tap both Leafkin Druids for 2 and the rest to play a Howling Giant. We'll get 2 more wolves. And then green will pass the turn. White untaps, draws, gets a plains. White will play the plains. White will tap 4 mana and play the Relief Captain, and we'll support 3. We'll put a +1/+1 counter on Soldier, Soldier, and Highcliff Felidar. White needs to knock out red so that green and white can knock out black. So white will attack red with all 3 creatures. Red will chump the Felidar with the Kargan Dragon Rider and will trade with the Pack Mastiff on one of the soldiers to survive at 1. In response to blocks, white will tap all the plains and cast Inspired Charge. It's an instant. It says creatures you control get +2/+1 until end of turn, making the soldiers 4/3s and the Highcliff Felidar a 8/7. Red will lose everything and will perish. And then, assured that green can finish black off, white will pass the turn. Black draws, hoping for anything. Draws another swamp in the Unending Flood. Will play the swamp, and then black will pass the turn to green. Green untaps, draws, gets a Growth Cycle. Green will then attack black with every creature that has power and toughness for an overwhelming amount of damage. Black has only 1 shot to make this work. We're going to block the Howling Giant and use to trigger off the Howling Golem to draw a card. We draw a swamp, and because we don't draw a murder to kill the Galta, we're going to take a gigantic pile of damage and perish, and black dies because of Mana Flood. And with that, green and white have a joint victory in having annihilated all of their opponents and win the game together. Let me know what your thoughts were about this in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button. If you'd like to see more of my videos, you can hit subscribe. This is Refresh. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.